right, so here is a quote-unquote build for Indebted Kindness itself, right? This is Indebted Kindness, the build. Although, you know, the build isn't really all that relevant. It's more just so the subclass synergy and using the correct combinations of fragments and, in certain cases, aspects, depending on what classes you're on, to maximize the potential of Indebted Kindness, as if it needed any help, because we all know how good this weapon is, regardless of the subclass. Volt shot on this thing with a snappy reload is just extremely good. Beacon rounds, impulse amplifier, lead from gold, all very good third column perks. However, the roll that I use the most, and I've held on to a few rolls, like I've got a lead from gold volt shot, I've got a surrounded one, I've got beacon rounds, volt shot. I basically have all the rolls, like minus like the 5 out of 5s, but this one's pretty much a 5 out of 5 for me, with a velocity masterwork, with quick launch, flared magwell, impulse amplifier. All this is feeding into basically making the sidearm hit scan, so like even from long range my rockets will typically I barely have to lead targets at all if they're moving. Like I can just hit them because the velocity is so good on it. And the reload is so snappy with impulse amplifier as well, right? This adds velocity and reload speed, that it just feeds straight into volt shot, right? Like I can literally just shoot one shot and reload, and I'm basically shooting at almost the same rate as if I wasn't even reloading. That's how snappy it is. So shoot, reload, always proccing jolt and from volt shot. So super good. I love my roll. I'm sure y'all have your own favorites, but regardless of the fact, I'm making this even better with the help of the Arc subclass and the synergy there, right? So the main takeaway here is that there's 3 fragments that we can use, and technically 4, that you can use to absolutely maximize Indebted Kindness, right? So I would say that the first most important fragment that you want to use with this is Spark of Beacons, right? So as long as we're amplified, our arc special weapon kills will create blinding explosions, and this blinding explosion stuns unstoppable champions. Keep in mind, volt shot stuns overloads. Keep in mind, we have anti-barrier sidearm, so Indebted Kindness with the help of the Arc subclass can stun all 3 champions. Not that you're going to be doing that regularly or consistently or reliably per se, but it can do it. More importantly though is that Spark of Beacons is basically like putting a flashbang inside of your rocket, and then when you shoot it, you're not only going to do a ton of damage from the sidearm, but you're going to set off a flashbang blinding explosion at the same time along with the jolt. So it's absolutely just nuts. You get crowd control and ad clear by using Spark and Beacons. Totally worth it. I've used it a ton to like do solo flawless dungeons with like forbearance. It's just absolutely nuts, Spark and Beacons. So on every single kill you can basically proc that blinding explosion, because it's super easy to get amplified in this game, especially on Hunter. You know, just getting one melee hit is going to amplify you. Same thing for Arc Warlock. You can get amplified super easily. Yeah, so Spark of Beacons is the #1 fragment that you're going to want to use to make Indebted Kindness even better. And then I would say Spark of Discharge is the second most important, because this is going to produce ionic traces from arc weapon kills, and it's at a rate that is pretty good. Like basically the same rate at which you can produce orbs of power from Arc Siphon, or Harmonic Siphon in this case, because we're matching our subclass to the weapon. Then yeah, whenever I kill an enemy and produce an orb of power, you can pretty much reliably produce ionic traces at the same time. And then we can get a second ionic trace from Spark of Ions on a 10-second cooldown. So this would be the third most important fragment to run with Indebted Kindness. Spark of Ions is just kind of a lesser Spark of Discharge in this case, but you can get an ionic trace from jolting any targets, you know, with whatever the means, right? So this doesn't just apply to arc weapons, it's your abilities as well. But yeah, so every now and then I can produce 2 ionic traces from one single kill, set off the blinding explosion, and all that, right? And then the fourth fragment that I was talking about, I'm not running here because I'm sacrificing so many fragments just to make one weapon better, which is just kind of silly, really. it's not needed. Like I just said, we don't really need to make Indebted Kindness better. It's that good. But if it ever does get nerfed, you might want to look at a video like this and say, how can I make it better? But yeah, regardless, normally I wouldn't run, invest that many fragments into one weapon in the loadout. I would invest most of my fragments and aspects into the actual build itself, right? Like the ability spam and the super and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, needless to say, so I'm running Spark of Resistance here just for survivability because it's too good to pass up. 25% extra damage resistance with a very generous parameters for being surrounded. It's like it just procs very easily. But if you wanted to make Indebted Kindness even better, technically you could run Spark of Amplitude, which is right here, and you can see how much I use it. I have never even purchased it on my Hunter. When you're amplified, any kills that you get create orbs of power. It's on a 10-second cooldown, however, like Spark of Ions, so it's not super great. But it would technically make Indebted Kindness better, because then every now and then you could produce 2 orbs of power and 2 ionic traces from one single kill, which is just pretty cool, right? So that's pretty much it for the Indebted Kindness build, right? It's just for enhancing Indebted Kindness. The actual build itself is kind of irrelevant. I'm running Lucky Rasberry here because I was under the impression that arcbolt grenades jolt enemies because it stuns overloads intrinsically now, right? And it says jolt in here in the description, but it's actually misleading. It doesn't apply jolt. It just produces more chaining capabilities, and all it's saying here is that you get more arcbolt grenade energy from jolting targets. So technically Indebted Kindness is giving me a lot of grenade energy for Lucky Rasberry because I got Volt Shot. So is my Lethal Current combination blow. But yeah, arcbolt grenades, I would still recommend running Spark of Shock, but I thought I was being clever because I couldn't use Spark of Shock. I didn't have room for it here, which is normally a staple fragment to use in arc subclasses for your arc grenades to apply jolt. But I thought I was getting having a workaround with Lucky Rasberry. Not the case. However, I can still stun overloads with the grenade very easily. So anyways, that's just what I ended up running here with some kickstart mods to just spam more arcbolt grenades. But overall, I'd say it's pretty underwhelming, especially without Spark of Shock. But like I said, the focus here is Indebted Kindness. You could also make a very good build with Stormcaller, using the same combination of fragments, but with the help of Electrostatic Mind and like Falling Sunstar, you can basically just have ionic traces come into you at all times, from killing jolted targets, blinded targets with your abilities, any abilities. The ionic traces give you more energy, they get to you faster, and they give your teammates ability energy as well, right? So you could really do something cool with it on Stormcaller. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. I will see you in the next one. Enjoy the clips, and don't forget to like the video.
gauge of pure combat potential. Make me proud. Make sure you're still standing when the dust settles.